Off the irradiated coast of Point Lookout, in a secret lab beneath a lighthouse, a rivalry more than 200 years in the making reaches its bitter end.
Slippery bastard! At last! Let's end this here and now.
Desmond Lockhart, a pre-war British Ghoul and former spy.
Ah yes, Mr. Lockhart. At last we meet, face to jar.
Versus Professor Calvert, a brilliant government scientist, reduced to a power-hungry brain in a jar. As is so often the case, it's up to the lone wanderer to decide who wins, but this rivalry wasn't just born out of a mutual dislike, as both characters are players in a much larger game, a kill-or-be-killed conflict between the last vestiges of the old world's pre-war elite, who all managed to find ways to cheat death and continue playing. In today's video, we revisit the conflict between the two players we know, the factions involved, the events which take place, and all of the potential endings, before finishing with some theories over who the other players may be, as many other pre-war characters in the setting found ways to survive too, with many more seeming like they would relish such a contest we could see continue in the future, as the ending in Point Lookout teases.
I'll be heading north to pursue my next rival. There are only a few of us left now. The great game goes on.
Today's video has chapters if you want to navigate to a particular section, and I'm also using the Fallout 4 Point Lookout mod as well, an incredibly accurate recreation of the original DLC from Fallout 3. For some amazing updated visuals. A link for that is in the description. But up first, we start at the very beginning, with the backdrop for this bitter pre-war rivalry and the chessboard where their game will be played, the irradiated swamplands of Point Lookout.
You look like a man who's been around the wastes, so I'll cut right to it. In Point Lookout, you'll find fresh-grown food, mysterious locales, and treasures as of yet unlooted. See the glorious boardwalk, fabled pleasure town of the sunny past, and beyond it lies the haunted swamplands. Who knows what's hidden in them? Now, I'm not normally one to discourage an adventurous spirit, but certain events have convinced me of the value of forewarning. Because you'll find more than a few exotic critters and inhospitable locals. So stay here if you're not man enough.
Seeped in history, this swampland was once Maryland's Point Lookout State Park, before the Great War started, but its rich history also helped shape much of the land we see. The land, which would later be called Maryland, was first discovered in 1612 by English explorers, who later built the Ark and Dove Cathedral, naming after the ships who brought them to the New World. The small seaside town became a tourist attraction, particularly the boardwalk that pays homage to the original English settlers, called Pilgrim's Landing. But several wars would also leave their mark on the region. Events of the American Civil War took place in Point Lookout, the natural biogas releasing from the ground in the current setting, a direct result of the Civil War era mass graves. And much later, on the outskirts of the marshland, the Turtle Dove detention camp was constructed during the Sino-American War, a prison and final resting place for many Chinese spies. In the current setting, the local inhabitants are almost universally hostile. A mysterious cult of tribals live in the cathedral overlooking the boardwalk, who are obsessed with the punga fruit, a type of flora unique to Point Lookout, which scrubs radiation from the system and heals the player at the same time. Ghouls stalk the forests and graveyards, deadly swamp lurks infest the many bogs and beachfronts, but it's the swamp folk themselves who are perhaps the greatest threat. These locals were hostile long before radiation polluted the water. Intensely isolationist and distrusting of the federal government, its inhabitants were ill-equipped to deal with the outbreak of the New Plague, a deadly infectious disease in the Fallout universe that ravaged pre-war America in the 2050s. Despite needing help, and disaster relief volunteers setting up camps on the beaches to do just that, any hopes of reconciliation were quickly ended after several attacks from the marsh-dwelling locals. Years of inbreeding and radiation have taken their toll, making the swamp folk today just as feral as the ghouls. But two very powerful families would also call Point Lookout home, their ancestral dwellings looming over the marshes. The Blackpool family were highly influential in the intense commercialization of the region, resulting in the once thriving Pilgrim's Landing tourist boardwalk, all a front to fund their obsession with the occult. And more pertinent to today's story, the Calverts. Once one of the most powerful families in America, their mansion is believed to be now abandoned, but upon our arrival aboard the Duchess Gambit, and with a little bit of a nudge from Tobar the ferryman.
I know I said Point Lookout was perfect for treasure hunters, but it is a rare day when you get a beacon like that.
The lone wanderer is encouraged to check out Calvert Mansion first. It's now time to begin today's story, heading up towards the mansion and arriving at the front gate. We discover it is in fact occupied.
You know tribal. Get in here and help me fight these bastards off, goddammit. Yes, you. I see you out there. Stop dicking around and help me, or else these cocksuckers will be coming after you next.
Meeting Desmond for the first time, proper introductions will have to wait, as the source of the smoke is revealed to be ways of attacking tribals from the Arkandov Cathedral. Like the great game itself, the goal is simple: kill or be killed.
I don't know who you are, but you need to help me if you want to stay alive. They've been at it all night. I think they're just about to breach the inner walls. Follow me. It looks like they're coming in from somewhere upstairs. Hurry, follow me. Find where they're coming in and stop them. I'll be keeping an eye on the cameras down here. Find where they're coming from and stop them. Just like before, I'll be keeping an eye out. That's one less way for them to get in. Follow me. I think we're about to get hit hard.
Here they come. Second floor on the right. More of them. On the right. First floor. The door on the left. First floor. They're at the front door. Get ready.
Clearing out the mansion floor by floor will earn the Superior Defender perk.
Can't let you think I'm not a gracious host, can I? So, tell you what I'll do. I'll share a few tips for the next time you're making a dramatic final stand.
And finally give the Lone Wanderer a chance to talk to Desmond properly for the first time.
So, my hero, huh? Think you came in and rescued me right in the nick of time? Not hardly. What's the difference between you and me, kid? What makes a gifted killer like yourself into a rock-hard bastard like me? The answer is training, you ignorant fuck! I've got 100 years of experience on you, and don't you forget it. Stick by me and you'll get a master's class at doing what has to be done.
Once an international intelligence agent, he became a ghoul through controls exposure to doses of radiation that would be lethal under normal circumstances. Desmond isn't the only character to have cheated death in this manner. In Boston, experimental radiation treatments were less than successful for researcher assistant Peters, but Eddie Winter did manage to ghoulify himself this way, outlasting the war in a secure hidden bunker. At this early stage, Desmond is less than forthcoming about his reasons for being in Point Lookout though.
My story? Tell you what, kid. My story's a lot like a Deathclaw's tongue. It's long, messy, and you don't want to get too personal with it. Understand? Suffice to say, I have business in Point Lookout.
Claiming his business is beyond our understanding.
You wouldn't understand it even if I tried to explain it to you. I don't know why anyone would bother with this shithole. It's filled with a bunch of disgusting inbreds and half-crazed loons. I'm gonna do what I came to do and then get the fuck out of here.
He's also clueless about the tribal's hostility.
Not a fucking clue. It'll be easy to chalk it up to their crazy religion.
But correctly surmises that there's more to these random attacks than meets the eye.
But if I'm right, and I always am, there's something else going on. That's the third attack in a month. Somebody's got a grudge with me. Whether it's a man or a god, I intend to set them straight.
Preparing to leave, Desmond has other plans.
Now hold on there. Not so fucking fast. You can be useful to me. I need someone willing to get their hands dirty. So, here's the deal. I help you get in with those tribals. You help me get what I want, and I'll make you fucking rich. Just try not to sprain a lobe while you're thinking about it. My time is short.
And so it's up to the Lone Wanderer again to infiltrate the tribals at the Arkandov Cathedral and figure out who's really behind these attacks before we can learn more about Desmond. Unfortunately, entry isn't so simple. A ceremony must be completed first.
And that means you can't get in unless you've gone through the ritual. Don't worry, it's nothing big, but it really does make a difference.
So it's off to the sacred bog to fight through hordes of swamp lurks before inhaling pollen from the enormous mother punga while collecting its seeds. Cue one of Fallout's biggest trips, featuring hallucinations of familiar characters, exploding Nuka-Cola quantums, Schmaltz tech bubbleheads, and an enormous red translucent bone saw appearing to randomly saw the ground. Waking up outside, the player now has a giant scar on their head, as someone decided to remove parts of our brain while we were under. Heading back to the cathedral, admission is now granted, and the Lone Wanderer finds Nadine, a girl who had gone missing after travelling on board the Duchess Gambit.
I've only been here a week or so, but I'm about ready to ditch this bunch of dummies. I already stole all the punga I could ever need.
She reveals that the cult's leader Jackson relays orders from a sacred spirit, which was actually responsible for ordering the tribals to attack Desmond at the mansion.
Hey, if you still want to know where Jackson's hiding, I can help you out. No reason for me to give a damn about this place, you know? His cave's under the cathedral, but it's hard to find. Use this key to get in through a wrecked ship down at the sea cliffs to the east.
Fixing our scar and giving us the key to investigate, Nadine parts ways with the player to hunt down the person responsible for our involuntary lobotomies.
I'm gonna go do some snooping, see what I can figure out. Meet me by the riverboat in a day or so, and maybe I'll have something for you.
Spoiler, it's Tobar the Ferryman.
Murder? Really, what would your father say?
Updating Desmond before visiting the cave will just result in another earful.
So why haven't you tracked down the leader and grilled him for info? Don't waste your time reporting back. Go find him and figure out what he wants with his place, you moron.
So heading to the sea cave location and entering via a wrecked sea tub, we locate Jackson inside an enormous cave at the end, speaking to what appears to be a hologram.
No, not astral knowledge, you simpleton. Psychic domination. And that still won't be possible until you destroy Desmond's jamming device.
You could choose to kill Jackson in this moment, shooting him in the back while he's talking. And the brain, although initially surprised, will actually be quite satisfied with this outcome. This mysterious entity clearly has no real love for the tribals.
Honestly, those fools aren't worth the meat they're made of. A minion that can't follow directions is no use at all.
Simply using them as a means to an end. The first clue to this brain's identity is the mention that Desmond is trespassing, and the reveal that the Ghoul is actually responsible for this being's body being destroyed.
Desmond. That bag of bones and bile will pay dearly for his trespasses. Were it not for his interference, I would still have a body. Still, its absence has only honed my brilliance, so perhaps I owe him my thanks. But the only pressing matter at the moment is a device in his possession. He has a jammer that limits my projection range to this pathetic cave. Remove that and I can extend my reach so much further. Killing Desmond would be a nice plus, but I'm sure we can get around to that later.
Despite Desmond's gruffness, the brain is equally dismissive of the Lone Wanderer.
Yes, away with you!
Tasking us with destroying Desmond's jamming device, it's time to report back to the mansion for the big reveal.
I knew it! I knew that little bastard was behind all this! After all these years, he stuck his head out, and this is my chance to cut it off. Figuratively speaking, of course.
Monologuing for longer than usual, Desmond reveals the identity as none other than Professor Calvert, going into great detail about their shared history.
So close to his family home, only he would be so stupid. There was once a man, Professor Calvert. The Calverts owned half of Maryland, back when there was a Maryland to own. Members of the Calvert family were influential all over the world. They practically owned a deed to the US government. In their best days, there were no less than 3 Calvert family senators, 7 members of the House, and 2 governors. They even had a top candidate for president, until that scandal with the dog forced him to drop out of the race. I was particularly proud of that one. If I know Professor Calvert, and I do, he's using a high-frequency cognitive sign broadcast. I have the perfect device to jam up his little talk box. All you need to do is take it to the highest point on the shore and install it. I knew he was here, and it is my intent to find him and call down a righteous fucking hammer on his head. Figurative, I mean. His head.
It's now time for the first choice in the questline, Thought Control, to pick a side. Although neither option is final, Desmond wants to install the jamming device on the Ferris wheel in the boardwalk, thus limiting Calvert's psychic range. Upon approaching the boardwalk though, Calvert will make his counter-offer.
It is I, Professor Calvert. Don't bother looking around. I'm in your mind. But, aren't you Desmond's faithful little employee? Coming to gum up my work, are we? Well, I have a better idea. How about instead of playing his game, you destroy that nasty little device? Deposit it in a nearby trash compactor, and we will never have to worry about it again. I assure you that the gratitude of Professor Calvert is worth a great deal more than that of a washed-up old limey.
Destroy Desmond's jamming device to allow the brain to expand its range of psychic influence beyond the Sea Cave and across all of Maryland. This is actually the most interesting reveal so far about the Professor. We will learn later on in his secret lab about the precise process through which he survived the war. Interred by his brother, Senator Calvert, his brain was extracted and preserved using experimental robo-brain technologies. This technology has allowed him to survive for over 200 years, but in addition his brain has actually developed the ability to telepathically communicate and control other people over long range. And it's this part which sets him apart from the other disembodied brains of the Fallout series, like the Think Tank and standard robo-brain enemies. And it's all thanks to a unique and experimental biogel that's actually given him these unique telepathic powers. Calvert is far from coy about his evil ambitions, instead enticing the lone wanderer with the promise of a reward. Choosing to side with Desmond and install the device, we'll see multiple tribals that ambush the player, and the brain will lose its ability to communicate.
You fool! What have you done? You will pay for this! Pay! No one betrays me! Do you and you will suffer! You and that Ghoul! Both! Pay! Coming for!
Siding with Calvert at this stage is the quicker option, destroying the jammer in the trash compactor, but what comes next is the same regardless of your choice, instructing us to return to the mansion upon completion for an explosive finale.
Return to Calvert Mansion. I have something there that I'd like you to see.
What bastard! What bastard! He killed my pups, nearly killed me.
It's apparently pretty tough to kill this old Ghoul, as he can be found in a panic room in the ruins of the mansion.
I know where he is. He overplayed his hand this time. You and me are going to walk in there and end this. He's in the lighthouse, the little fuck. Right under my nose the whole time. Hiding behind robots and machines. What a miserable life. Pathetic. He dies now.
It's time to finish this though, heading to the lighthouse to end this 200-year feud in the now accessible secret laboratory, the St. Aubin Medical Facility. This final mission begins slightly differently if you chose to destroy the jammer for Calvert though. Desmond will already be in the next location, waiting for you with a final offer of an alliance.
What? You betrayed me because I wasn't polite? Are you out of your fucking mind? Fine then. Would it make your little feel-bads all better if I said please? Then pretty please, fucking help me rid the world of Professor Calvert.
You could choose to finish him here and now, looting his unique spectacles before an audience with Calvert for your reward, but it's probably worth keeping him around for now to see how this plays out, as he will be quite helpful against the robots inside, and there will be a final opportunity to pick a side later on. Fighting your way through the robo-brain security, looting keycards for each sector eventually leads to the final showdown.
There you are, you slippery bastard. At last, let's end this here and now.
Ah yes, Mr. Lockhart. At last we meet, face to jar. But I'm afraid that at the end of this, it is you who'll meet his end.
No, Calvert. I brought someone with me. Someone very special. This stranger tricked you into letting me find where you are hiding.
Yes, Desmond, but whose side is he on? Do you know? Can you be sure? You are always so bad at choosing your allies.
Well, we shall see, shan't we? Destroy him.
No, destroy him!
Desmond's offer of riches still stands, expecting you to side with him, but Calvert's offer is a bit more enigmatic.
One beyond your imagination, beyond reckoning, the most amazing gift a living creature can be granted.
So who should you side with? Put simply, Desmond. If you take up Calvert on his offer, this is actually your reward.
Well, I would have expected nothing less from you, and now I have a very special gift. Death!
And you'll be forced to destroy the brain of the robots anyway. Irrespective of who you sided with, your rewards are a healthy amount of XP, any loot from the location, and the unique microwave emitter. But the benefit of siding with Desmond is we get to have one final chat with him about the future, where he reveals the scale of this great game to us for the first time.
You're free to take whatever you find in this disgusting place. What I came for is of no interest to you. Enjoy your spoils. I don't think our paths will ever cross again. And I think we can both thank Christ and say hallelujah for that.
Hi,
Good, more questions. Guess we're best fucking friends now. I'm pulling all the data that I can from Calvert's computers. Everything the little bastard gathered is here. And then, when I'm done, I'll leave this place to sink into the sea. Now that we're rid of Calvert, I'll be heading north to pursue my next rival. There are only a few of us left now. The great game goes on. Sort of what's a word you'd understand? Microcosm. Yeah, it's a microcosm for the whole world.
So as Desmond heads north to face his next rival, it's time for some theories. Who else is playing Fallout's great game? We're going to be approaching this with two different categories. First, a roster of other influential pre-war figures from the Fallout series, who like Desmond, live on in the post-war world, exploring whether they once were, could be again, or are still players in the great game. Second, a selection of characters that are mentioned only, some big factions who could have members playing the game, and some characters who already have a bit of a mystery about them, with some pretty wild conspiracy theories in this last category. Beginning with the first category, we have one of the most important figures in Fallout lore, Dr. Stanislaus Braun. Once a brilliant scientist working for Vault-Tec, he served as the head of its Future Tech division, was responsible for creating the Garden of Eden creation kit, and was also the director of the infamous Societal Preservation Program, which meant he was not only privy to the Vault's true purpose, but was also responsible for creating many of the insidious experiments that would be conducted inside. He was also no stranger to underhand dealings, similar to the Calverts, using his influence to obtain tranquility lounges from General Constantine Chase. Powerful simulation technology that could create a near-perfect virtual world cater-made to its creator's wishes. His personal ticket to survive the apocalypse. Installing them in Vault 112, and unfortunately for the other residents, Braun was in complete control of the simulated utopias inside, and this is where we find him in Fallout 3, currently posing as Betty in the latest simulation, Tranquility Lane.
I had the distinct impression you enjoyed yourself.
He could have made worlds giving everyone a perfect life. Instead, Braun has treated his neighbours like playthings, statistically killing them over time, before wiping their memories, resurrecting them, and restarting new simulations for almost 2 centuries. A narcissistic, arrogant psychopath with an inflated sense of intelligence and a short temper, he is more than Professor Calvert's match in that regard. But unlike Calvert or Desmond, his only wish in the post-war world is to live on, torturing the fellow dwellers of Vault 112 for all of eternity in new simulated worlds. So, while I think given his rich history, underhand dealings, and influence pre-war could have made him a player of the great game once, he is no longer interested, making it doubtful Desmond will ever come knocking at his door. Just like Braun, another pre-war titan, John Caleb Bradberton, the inventor and CEO of the Nuka-Cola Corporation, had all the hallmarks of a player in this game, but post-war, he's in a bit of a pickle. Perhaps second only to Vault-Tec in the contest for worst company in Fallout lore, Nuka-Cola was the single largest beverage corporation in the US, but also had global popularity. But behind the family-friendly facade, it was a cutthroat entity that had perfected corporate espionage, and its creator Bradberton encapsulated all of its worst qualities. Just like the Calverts and Braun, Bradberton was no stranger to using his position and influence to get what he wanted. He owned half of Massachusetts, used shadowy Nuka-Cola agents to dig up dirt and competition, even openly attacking rivals in the case of the Vim Corporation, and most importantly,
made a devil's bargain, though I didn't know it at the time. This was General Braxton's plan all along. Damn the man. He called it Project Cobalt. In exchange for my weapon design, he would give me access to life-extending technology.
And this bargain was his method of surviving the Great War, which came at a huge personal cost, leasing his experienced team of beverages to the US military to aid in biochemical research for the war effort. Bradberton tells us himself what he really wants now.
I want you to shut off the power to this machine that's keeping me alive. I want to die.
What? No!
Thus ruling him out of the running as a current player in the great game. However, unlike Braun, who got exactly what he wanted, retiring to a twisted virtual reality, Bradberton originally wanted a living biosuit that would preserve his body, allowing him to continue on as normal. So, assuming that he had got his wish, and wasn't just a frozen head in a jar, I think it's very plausible that he would have been a player in the great game if given the choice. Up next, we have a very interesting selection of characters, the think tank of Big Mountain.
In the years before the Great War, Big Mountain had been the home to the brightest minds of the 21st century. Scientists of vision were drawn to the facility to tackle the greatest technological challenges of the era. They sought to create a new world, fueled by technology, for the benefit of all mankind.
Using very similar technology to Professor Calvert to preserve their brains, the think tank bots were originally the 6 human executives of the Big Mountain Research Facility, whose original names are lost to time. Pre-war, they were credited as some of the greatest minds of the 21st century, and were given access to their unlimited resources by the US military for the war effort. Not only that, but as we learned from Dr. Boris, they were given free rein to do much, much more.
The true test was science on unsuspecting Americans. Whether it was holograms, new autodocs, toxins, vending machines, we wound them up, let them go into tiny, isolated towns. Then we observed.
They were even aware of the true purpose of vaults, something that was very privileged information.
We could use that city as a controlled experiment. Vault Tech was much better at it, of course. We had to make do. Get permission. Sometimes.
Despite their best efforts though, the Great War began and ended, the executives going under the knife to extract their brains, transferring them to think tanks, one notable side effect being the complete loss of personality and their own names due to a recursion loop in their new perception programming.
They have all forgotten themselves, and not only themselves, but the world.
With nobody to stand in their way, their research continued, becoming more sinister and debauched as the years went by, until one member finally had enough. Dr. Mobius, disillusioned with their methods and tired of endless and horrible experimentation, grew deeply afraid of the damage they would cause upon the fragile post-apocalyptic world.
And the world isn't ready for that kind of too-far thing-taking. That's my professional opinion, anyway.
Night Stalkers and Cazadors had already escaped, so he decided to act. First erecting a radar fence around the perimeter of the Big MT to prevent the brains from escaping into the wastes.
Now, trap is a rather harsh word.
And second, hacking the databanks of his former friends.
It was a merciful lobotomy, really, thinking back. They were my friends, but sometimes they would take things too far.
Settling into a role as the villain, he has spent the years distracting the think tank from his fortress called the Forbidden Zone, perpetuating fear of leaving thanks to his robo-scorpions, fostering the belief that they can consume intelligence from the brains, and propping up the lie that nothing exists outside.
No! Beyond is death, despite mounting evidence to the contrary.
Locked in a stalemate, Mobius's plan to keep them contained was working, until the arrival of something very unique inadvertently gifted the think tank a method to escape, the courier's brain. After being shot by Benny in the opening cutscene of Fallout New Vegas, the player character's brain was changed, and because of this unique change, after being abducted and lobotomized at the beginning of the DLC by the think tank, we managed to survive, and by acquiring the right technology from the Big MT, we could actually reverse the process, successfully placing our brain back inside a physical body.
Bullets in the head are usually much more fatal, and yours was a light case of bullet headitis. But it was enough for the autodoc in the sink to change its programming to fix the problem, and the brain extraction technology for once worked.
A process which the think tank could actually copy.
That gave the think tank the knowledge its brains couldn't possess. With that knowledge, the procedure can be reversed. If they obtain that procedural data, they can use it to mush and modify their cranial selves into hosts to slip past the radar fence. I'm sure of it.
Recognizing the danger, Mobius stole our discarded brain and enacted a scheme to encourage the think tank to task the player with retrieving those technologies, engineering a final showdown with the courier in the Forbidden Zone. We are left then with 2 questions in relation to today's video. Were the think tank once potential players of the great game, and could they be again? And I think the answers are yes and no. While they were still human, each was a recognized leader in various fields of science, robotics and medicine. The best of the best, who like Desmond and Calvert, had some pretty serious personal rivalries of their own. Simply speaking, to Dr. Zero, his intense hatred for Robert House is plain to see.
How dare you bring Robco Tech in here? What are you showing off? How great Robert House and his big company are?
Oh, we can make Securitrons better than any robot those geniuses at Big Mountain can make, and they'll last 1,000 years.
You're lucky I don't have hands to tear that dip boy off your arm, or feet to stomp on its stupid metal guts. Ugh. Damn Robco.
Mobius will also mention that the think tank's personalities aren't just a result of their transference either.
Well, you could try and appeal to their humanity. That's a tired cliche. And really, when they were humans, they weren't very good humans.
They were almost certainly in the same circles as characters like Dr. Braun, Calvert and Desmond too, as we can surmise from their knowledge about very privileged information like what Voltec were really up to, and they also had access to near unlimited resources from the government. And they even had free reign to experiment on unsuspecting American cities and citizens as well. The technology that enabled them to become the think tank we now see and outlive the war is also very similar to Calvert of course as well. But because of Mobius's tampering and their recursion loops, there will never be the same 6 human executives that could have been pre-war players like Desmond and Calvert. Their original names lost to time. Much of the DLC is simply spent trying to remind them that they were once human at all, helping Boris understand his experimentation on his loyal pet Gabe was both inhumane and sadistic.
This sensation is unpleasant. I don't care for it. I don't care for this place either. And I feel as if we've forgotten something.
Darla, remember what it was like to feel.
Thank you, Lobotomite. Please, you must come back for further study when I've had a rest. I'm a little sensitive right now.
And Dr. Zero resolved the issues with his name being mistaken for O.
Who am I deceiving? I never would have figured that out. I can't figure anything out. I'm useless.
But even by doing all of this and hypothetically imagining what could happen if they were to use physical hosts to escape.
And we have so many questions to ask your brain first about this Mojave place, a fertile testing ground for our experiments.
It definitely seems that canonically, the think tank cannot become players of the great game again, unless one scenario was to occur, as the 2 canon endings of this DLC will see the think tank either contained or destroyed, never to leave Big Mountain.
That's no deal at all. There's a whole world beyond the crater, filled with ideas and possibilities. We could have escaped, seen it all for ourselves, tested it, prodded at it, made it squirm.
But perhaps it's possible that Desmond might have known about the Big Empty's existence, and he could one day potentially come knocking on their door, eager to acquire their knowledge and research. But the think tank who would greet him would have absolutely no idea who he was, even if they were once aware of each other's existence. Moving on to the final candidate, we have a character already mentioned in this section. Last but definitely not least, we have the only powerful pre-war character who I believe was, currently isn't, but depending on player choices could be again a player in the great game. Mr. House.
I am Robert Edwin House, President, CEO, and sole proprietor of the New Vegas Strip. I oversaw the city's renovations starting from 2274 onward. The 3 families are my employees. Before the Great War of 2077, I was the founder, president, and CEO of Robco Industries, a vast computer and robotics corporation.
The man who would one day become the enigmatic ruler of New Vegas, Robert Edwin House was a pre-war corporate titan, founder of Robco Industries, and the nation's most infamously eccentric businessman. It's pretty handy we can actually speak to another pre-war character, the Ghoul Raoul, about his memory of House, where he will tell the courier about a scandal.
I remember there were some weird stories about him, especially near the end. There was a tell-all in El Periódico de las Aburridas by a starlet, House stated. She said they never, don't make me spell it out, boss. Anyway, she said all he wanted to do was scan her brain and make her dress up in different outfits.
As we covered earlier, Desmond was very familiar with using scandals to hamper his political rivals, in the case of one Calvert presidential candidate. Could he have had something to do with this as well? Ultimately though, what makes me believe that Mr. House is a player in the great game is his belief that humanity needed to be saved by himself, interring his physical body, itself already enhanced, within a life support device. The mortal man seemingly becoming a digitally immortal one, his brain wired directly into a vast information network via an enormous supercomputer. But the final step in his great plan failed, and is the sole reason why I believe House isn't currently a player in the great game. Central to the narrative of Fallout New Vegas, the Platinum chip contains a vital OS upgrade for his Securitrons.
Behold, for the first time, Securitrons running the Mark II OS. The M235 missile launcher gives the Securitron the ability to engage ground and air targets at significantly longer ranges.
A side note I always found interesting is that the in-game description for the Meet of Champions special perk mentions that you'll gain Caesar's intelligence and Mr. House's luck for cannibalizing these characters. But House doesn't actually strike me as someone who's been particularly lucky. Even after the clerical mishap pre-war, our character Courier 6 fails to deliver the Platinum chip. We're then forced to chase down Benny, House's trusted protege, who actually plans to betray him. And there's no guarantee we will even choose to help him once we reach the Lucky 38. Assuming the House always wins though, and the game ends in his favor, he has this to say about his future plans.
New Vegas is more than a city. It's the remedy to mankind's derailment. The city's economy is a blast furnace in which can be forged the steel of a new rail line running straight to a new horizon. What is the NCR? A society of people desperate to experience comfort, ease, luxury. A society of customers. With all that money pouring in? Give me 20 years and I'll reignite the high technology development sectors. 50 years and I'll have people in orbit. 100 years and my colony ships will be heading for the stars to search for planets unpolluted by the wrath and folly of a bygone generation. I prefer the term autocrat. I would rule as a chief executive. I would not answer to a board of directors or any other entity. Nothing to impede progress. If you want to see the fate of democracies, look out the windows. My judgment. I have no interest in abusing others, just as I have no interest in legislating or otherwise dictating what people do in their private time. Nor have I any interest in being worshipped as some kind of machine god messiah. I am impervious to such corrupting ambitions. But autocracy? Firm control in the hands of a technological and economic visionary? Yes, that Vegas shall have.
Lofty goals indeed, and if Desmond Lockhart one day arrived at his door, eager to acquire his research, House would do anything to ensure nothing comes between his ambition again, including, I think, eliminating Desmond before he even gets a chance to knock. Finishing up with the first section, I think we can also rule out the Calverts, and the two occult-worshipping families of Fallout, the Dunwich Company, and the Black Halls, the latter being based in Point Lookout already. They have nothing Desmond wants. But moving on to the second section, we have mentioned only characters and factions. And I think a perfect starting point is the other Calverts. Senator Calvert was responsible for organising his brother's transfer to the St. Alban Medical Facility, and could be the same presidential candidate that Desmond had previously sabotaged. If Desmond was to return in a later game, this seems like an easy opponent for him to battle. Of all the factions in Fallout though, one group arguably has more potential rivals than any other. Long before the Great War, the pre-war Enclave were a shadowy group of individuals from across the United States. With close ties to Vault-Tec, Poseidon Oil, and other corporate entities, it was the Enclave who dreamt up the true purpose of the Vaults. Convinced that the Earth would be rendered uninhabitable by nuclear war, they wanted to gather data from the nefarious Vault experiments to one day create a multi-generational starship to settle on other planets. And roughly 6 months before the Great War actually began, the President left the White House alongside many of its other members, relocating to the safety of Control Station Enclave. So, with a solid 6 months to prepare, it's definitely plausible that the members of that group, including personnel from Vault-Tec and Poseidon Energy, could have enacted their own personal ploys to survive. Outside of the Vault's overseers and former professors of Vault-Tec University, there aren't too many named senior members of Vault-Tec currently in the setting. Giles Wollstonecroft is perhaps the most senior, as the Assistant Chief Executive Officer, but he was abducted sometime between 2064 and 2069 after being abducted by the Zetans. His fate didn't sound too promising, and that only really leaves Braun, who of course did use his position to leverage a means to survive, so I could definitely see other very high-ranking members potentially doing the same. Although there is a character in the setting who could also be an agent of Vault-Tec, or could just as easily be something else entirely. Wearing an identical outfit to the one worn by the Vault-Tec rep in Fallout 4, this figure has appeared throughout the continental United States over the course of at least 120 years. Committing seemingly random acts of violence to assist people who have the most direct sway over how events will unfold. The mysterious stranger, and one of the most popular theories is that this man is in fact a time traveler, which would undoubtedly be the most unique method of outliving the war. But it's also one that is currently impossible to categorically prove. What do you think though? Is the mysterious stranger a time traveler playing the great game, or something else entirely? With that though, we've reached the end of today's video. As the dust settles on Desmond's battle with Calvert, the tantalizing prospect of a new matchup remains up in the air. Fallout 5 is still a long way off, but the possibility of a return does seem at the very least possible. I think the most likely rivals for Desmond in a future game would probably be another Calvert, or perhaps most realistically, a completely original character. But what do you think? Would you like to see this gruff ghoul appear in a future title, with the great game entering its next phase? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. If you enjoyed this particular video, please consider subscribing to help the channel grow. With that said though, I'm off. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.